Since the leak start, I've been playing my Frostbolt Stormweaver, and I already made a video about leveling and the early endgame. So now it's time for an update about what to do when you have a good amount of currency to invest into the build. And this is most likely going to be my final update, because I reached the point where I killed all of the bosses at the highest difficulty within a few seconds, and I also cleared simulacrums. To be honest, simulacrum on hardest difficulty was actually pretty hard for the build, because we struggle with recovery, and in simulacrums there's just a lot of monsters, so it's hard to recharge energy shield, but I still was able to do it. And the build also has insane clear in the maps. I crafted boots with 60% movement speed, which definitely help with clear speed. We have a pretty much full screen wide clear with combination of Frostbolt and the Scepter that I'm gonna talk about later. And I also ended up crafting gear with 100% rarity, so we also are farming good amount of currency in just maps. And of course, like always, if you want a written guide, everything is going to be updated on the max roll, so you can check out both the leveling and the custom crit version of the build. So the first thing I want to talk about once again is the Snakepit, because I keep getting so many questions about why this ring is mandatory for a build. And to be honest, it is not super mandatory if you want to play just cast on aimant version with Frost Nova, and you can just play this build perfectly fine without it. You can just continue clearing map until you can afford Snakepit, but to be able to swap to custom crit, it is highly recommended to swap to the Snakepit. And it's not because of the fork. I keep getting questions, why do we need fork so bad? We don't care about the fork perk. Yes, it is nice to have additional fork. We care about the bottom line. Projectiles from spells cannot pierce. Because normally, let's say Frost Wall is the enemy. If you don't have a Snakepit, the Frostbolt is just gonna pass through, and it is going to deal damage of the projectile. So it is this damage, 22,000. But then at the end of its travel, it is going to reach the wall, and then it is going to detonate. And that detonation is dealing, instead of 22,000, it's dealing 31,000. So, and I'm also not sure, but I'm almost sure that both of these can hit at the same time. So if there is an enemy, let's say enemy is here, and it's hit by projectile and then explosions, it can actually be hit by both. So it just deals a lot of damage. So the reason why Snakepit is so important is because it is disable the piercing. So now, whenever we hit the enemy, so let's say the Frostwall is the enemy, it is going to basically not necessarily it's going to detonate on the first hit, but it is going to fork, because it gives fork, and then the next projectiles, the projectiles that did fork, these are gonna detonate instantly. So it's gonna create a chain reaction, as you see here, and yeah, everything is just going to die. And it is very important for bosses, because on bosses, we care about custom crit, because custom crit of course procs a lot of comets, so it's just a lot of damage. And to proc custom crit, of course, we need to crit, so that's why we go for a lot of crit chance. I recommend at least like 70% before swapping to custom crit, and then every single one of these explosions is going to crit, or well, 70% of them, and then every 70% of the Frostbolt's explosions also are going to crit. So it's just gonna generate a ton of energy. Unless, of course, you have 100% crit chance, then all of them are gonna crit. It generates a ton of energy for the custom crit, which is gonna generate a ton of comets, and comets are gonna do crazy single target. And that is the main difference from custom elemental ailment, where custom elemental ailment you have to freeze or shock or ignite, where it doesn't happen too often on boss, so you don't generate as much energy for single target. So yeah, that's the main thing about Snakepit, and that's why we want to use it for the build. For clear, it also helps, because now we can just cast Frostbolt and everything is just going to die to the Frostbolt's explosions. It's not going to have a good clear. We no longer have to use cast Frost Nova. We don't really have to cast Snap that often. So it's just very good for clear, because now it detonates on enemies and forks. And also it's good for single target, because it destroys the Frost Walls. Okay, so now that we have that out of the way, let's talk about the current build and what I'm using, so skills and gear and so on. So what I ended up doing for Frostbolt, I just recently swapped to Science Temper. To be honest, I liked playing with just multi-shot for a long time, because I like to just shoot Frostbolts in front of me. Let me just show you normally when it shoots without the proc. Yeah, like this, but you have 3 projectiles, and you just run with your Frostbolts, and everything in front of you is just enemies just die to the Frostbolts that are basically like in front of you. But after a while, I swapped to this because, first of all, this is much better than the regular wild shots because it just procs so often. But on top of that, at this point, I have so much damage that I don't care about all of the projectiles being like kind of next to each other. It is fine for them to be spread around. I still kill monsters pretty often. So it is up to you. You can test it. If you have good enough damage, I would definitely swap to Science Temper, but with low damage, I actually kind of prefer to use just regular Scatter Shot because, yeah, all of the Frostbolts are kind of next to each other, so all of them overlap and so on. Next, we go for acceleration, of course, for more speed, because Frostbolt is kind of slow. Then Pinpoint Critical, very important, because it gives a ton of crit chance, and we don't care about crit damage reduction, because we are using Malignant Virtuosity, which right now I have with 2 sockets, because this is just gonna set your crit damage to 250, and it doesn't matter if we use it or not. If we have Pinpoint Critical, it's always gonna be 250, and you can see that my Frostbolt has 100 crit chance, without it 60%, so it's a ton of crit chance. I'm using Pinpoint Critical on pretty much every single one of my skills. Then Rising Tempest. This is actually a pretty cool socket, because this gives 12% more damage per different elemental type skill you used. So it doesn't have to be this skill, it can be a different skill. But fortunately, things like Snap has all tags. You can see it is lightning, cold, and fire. And also, the elemental weakness is also lightning, fire, and cold. So every time you use a curse, it increases damage of all of the abilities that have Rising Tempest by 36%. So if I are using it, it is pretty important to every few seconds while we are running, just cast either a curse or the Snap. And it doesn't even have to hit the target. As long as you just cast Snap every like few seconds, you're gonna deal 36% more damage. And then I'm using Magnified Area, because for clear, I just want my Frostbolt to hit more targets. Then on a Frost Wall, Spell Cascade, just to have more walls. Cooldown Recovery, of course, for better cooldown. Again, Pinpoint Critical, Rising Tempest. You're gonna see this just pretty much everywhere, just Pinpoint Critical, Rising Tempest, because these are the strongest ones. And Fortress, so that Frost Walls are more kind of together. So just to show you without it, Frost Wall is gonna like kind of spread out. Sometimes it's like this, but sometimes it's like in a line where they show up like this. So for single target, you do prefer to have them kind of more closer together, so that all of them are overlapping on the boss. For Snap, to be honest, Snap is the least important ability. I'm even thinking about removing it, because you can still use Elemental Weakness to proc the Rising Tempest, but it costs more mana. But it doesn't matter that much. So for Snap, again, Pinpoint Critical, Rising Tempest, and I did put all of these sockets in the highest priority, I'm pretty sure. Yes, Fortress has the least priority here. Yeah, it should be from the highest priority to the worst priority. Rising Tempest, then Concentrated Area, because it's 30% more damage. You can also go for Magnified Effect if you want to snap like more targets, but if you want to deal more damage to single targets, so for example, whenever there's a rare monster and it's frozen, you can just just snap it and just gonna deal a ton of damage to it. Consider Casting, more damage. Elemental Focus, we don't care about not inflicting ailments, because Snap already cannot inflict ailments, so that's also pretty good. And now actually let's talk about this last. The next one is Frostbolt Spell Cascade with the... Actually, I was testing it. Wait a second. I was this whole time using the wrong sockets here. Okay, it was supposed to be here. Potent Exposure, just it applies better exposure. Then Magnified Area, so it's just, well, bigger. Cooldown Recovery, of course. And I started using Commiserate and Overcharge. To be honest, you can put whatever you want in here. I just couldn't find anything that is good. I was using Forling for a lot of time. But then I went for Commiserate and Overcharge, because I'm no longer using the Ascendancy that guarantees that I am shocking with cold damage. Now I am shocking with just lightning damage. So every single one of my skills, actually it doesn't even matter. Even with that Ascendancy, you still would be able to do this. Basically, what it does is the Overcharge gives you increased magnitude of shock that it inflicts, and Commiserate makes it so the shock is consumed when it is cast on you, and this reflects the shock back to you. So it's basically, this prevents you from being shocked from this, and this increases the shock by 50%. So anytime Frostbomb, which to be honest doesn't happen too often, every time it shocks, it's gonna be 50% better shock with 50% increased magnitude. Anytime we get shock from any other skill, it's gonna be weaker, but this is gonna take priority. So yeah, just sometimes you're gonna have a little bit better shocks. But Frostbomb doesn't do that much lightning damage, so it's very small chance. But yeah, there is nothing really better to put in here. And a weakness, heightened Cursed with prolonged duration, and you can use either Cursed Ground or Focused Curse, or can actually use Focused Curse even here. But Curse Ground is pretty good because it's leaving the curse on the ground. So whenever you are in a map, or let's say you're doing Abyss or maybe in Simulacrum, you can just leave the cursed grounds, and you can have 2 cursed grounds, and all of the targets within it are gonna be cursed. It is actually worse for bosses that teleport around a lot, because let's say there's a boss in here. Normally you would just curse it, and then boss teleports, and it still would be cursed. Now, because this is a cursed ground, if boss teleports, let's say over here, you have to recast the curse here. So it is up to you if you want to use this or not. Siphon Elements with Harmonic Remnant for more infusions, Cold Mastery. You can use any +1 because it has all elemental tags. You can use Fire, Cold, or Lightning, but you can use only one of them. And Clarity, simply because I have a little bit more Spirit. You don't have to use it if you don't have the Spirit for it. And then Convalescence with cooldown, prolonged duration, and second wind. It is very important defensive tool because we don't have good recovery, so occasionally whenever we go down and we know that we cannot like run away from monsters easily, to trigger the recharge, you just use the Convalescence. And now the cast on crit and cast on element. But before I talk about that, also I want to mention the reason why we go for Siphon Elements and the Remnants is because Comet gets the benefit from the Fire Remnants. The Frost Wall gets the benefit from the Lightning Remnant. We actually don't get benefit. We are cold build and we are not getting any benefit from the cold remnants. If you use Frost Nova or Frost Darts, then yes, you were getting benefit from it, but now we don't. So how do we generate these 2 infusions? Well, you actually can just get Elemental Equilibrium, which makes all of them to be random ones. So now, whenever you freeze, you don't always get cold. You sometimes get fire, you sometimes get lightning. It's basically 33% for each one of them. So that's how we are generating fire and lightning infusion remnants. And we are also using the refracting infusion, so you have 50% chance to collect a different one. So yeah, we just do get a lot of fire and cold infusions. So you very often see, fire and lightning infusions. So you very often see the fire comets falling down from the sky, which deal way more damage. It is actually split between fire and cold, so you deal a little bit less cold, but you deal a lot of fire, which, to be honest, doesn't matter too much which element we are dealing. It is still pretty good. And also you can ignite with that comet, which should generate even more energy for the well, not energy, should generate the remnants from the siphon elements when you ignite. Okay, so going back to the triggers, of course, you want to use custom elemental ailment before you have Snakepit, but once you do get Snakepit, you swap it to cast on crit. And then, once you get a Scepter, which gives you a lot of energy, a lot of spirit, you can actually start using both. And the reason for that is now cast on crit is pretty good for single target, because it just procs many times whenever you do the Frostbolt plus Frostbolt combo. But custom elemental ailment procs a lot during mapping, because on maps we are freezing very often, shocking and igniting, so we just do a lot of overall ailment, so we proc a lot of custom elemental ailment. So this is for single target, this is for bossing, but both of them still proc in other situations anyway. So this is why I went for Spell Cascade for the custom elemental ailment, so that there is more comets spawning, so that's pretty good for clear. And I went for Concentrated Area for custom crit, because it's more damage but less area, but for single target you don't care about the area. We of course need efficiency, because mana is a big struggle for the build, and I'm gonna talk about that later, how do I kinda did fix that for the build. So you're always going to struggle with mana, but we can at least help with that. So efficiency for both of them, pinpoint critical, pretty important. And here I'm using Rising Tempest, but for the cast on crit, I actually did buy Dial's Desire, which is very expensive. It was actually one of the last upgrades I did. And it does give +1 to supported skills, and it actually works for both cast on crit and Comet. So that's actually very, very nice. That's why I went for it. And it also gives a reservation and cost multiplier also for both of them. And it gives 10% quality for both of them. So we in total get +2 to skill gems, plus 20 to quality, and well, reservation and mana cost reduction. So yeah, it's pretty good. And the big thing is here is the cost, so that we do make the comet cost more or less mana. With this, we make it cost even less. So it's just overall pretty good for this build. And let's actually talk about mana in more details right now. So how do we help the mana? So how do we make our comet cost less mana? How do we get more mana regen and so on? So how do we sustain our mana? Well, first, like I said, efficiency here, then Dial's Desire also helps. On top of that, you want to try to get as much as flat mana and mana regen on your gear. I actually don't have that much. I only have mana regen on my amulet, and I have percentage mana on my ring, and I'm pretty sure that's it. I don't have anywhere else mana or mana regen. You could get more, you could get on ring, you could get on, I'm pretty sure you can get flat mana. Oh, I actually have flat mana on belt, 100 mana. So yeah, and the more mana you have, the more you regen, because regen is based off percentage of your mana. So yeah, that's what you want to go for. On top of that, pretty important mana cost efficiency here. That's definitely should go for it. And once you have good amount of points, you also should go to the bottom here and grab these 3 mana cost efficiency nodes. And also you can get 10% mana efficiency on the helmet, and if you have 2 sockets like I have, you can get 20%. And with all of that, with so much mana cost efficiency, oh, and on top of that, we have 10% mana cost efficiency here from the triggers and some trigger damage. And I also went here for additional mana regen. It's 50% increased mana regen. I tried the 15% mana recover rate here, but it didn't help that much. I also changed my Ascendancy a little bit, and I went for Arcane Surge with Arcane Surge effect. We don't really care about damage taken from mana before life, but the 20% Arcane Surge per missing mana is pretty nice to have. So all of these things combined made my mana basically tolerable. It's still going down a lot when you're fighting bosses, but it's not like super bad. We still would want to be something like Chronomancer or a Blood Mage to not have to struggle with mana, but Stormweaver always going to have to struggle with it. But I always say that Stormweaver, when it comes to this build, is the best Ascendancy to start with, because it doesn't really require anything that is like too crazy when it comes to investment. You can just play it normally. The only thing, of course, you want is Snakepit, but that's for all 3 of them, and you can still play even without the Snakepit for a long time. But after you actually get good gear, like I have kind of here, swapping to Chronomancer or a Blood Mage is probably a good idea, because at that point we do heavily have to invest into mana on this build, and on the other 2 versions you don't have to. Okay, so that was the triggers. I'm pretty sure I talked about all of the skills and the mana. So now let's talk about the gear, starting with Scepter, because that is kind of connected to the skills, and this is how I'm able to have so many of the meta gems active. I do have the 60% 60 spirit from my amulet and 100 spirit from the scepter. This scepter is very expensive, but it's also very good. It gives you basically explosion mod. Gloom Shrine is an explosion mod. Basically makes all of the enemies you kill deal damage as chaos to nearby enemies. It just helps with clear a lot. To be honest, we don't need like that much help with the clear, but it's still pretty nice to have. But this is very expensive, so if you can't afford this, I actually would recommend going for the cheaper one, which is called, all of them are called Palm of the, and this one is called Palm of the I am pretty sure, yes, that's the one. And this one is kind of cheap, and it also gives you 100 spirit like any other scepter, but it also gives you the freezing shrine, which basically shoots projectiles around you, which to be honest is not that strong, but it also gives you 25% damage as extra cold. So it is pretty good budget option to go for a long time. I actually think that now, after playing with scepter for a long time and with this setup with both of them, I actually think I would go for the guiding palm of the eye very early on. I wouldn't even use a focus. I would just swap to that, and then eventually, once I would have currency, I would swap to Palm of the Dreamer. For the other pieces of gear, I'm still using Maligaro. You just want as much crit as possible, and preferably 2 sockets, because that's how I am able to be a res cap. To be honest, I'm kind of a little bit over res cap, but it's still fine. I also corrupted my own Snakepit, and I got elemental resistances. I am almost res capped without it, so I probably would have to use maybe like 1 rune for cold if I didn't have that corruption. Then the most important thing when it comes to resistances is the belt. You just want as much resist as you can in here. And then on the prefixes, the only useful modifiers are mana and flask recovery from on mana. And speaking of flask, it is also very important to have a good roll of the increased amount recovered on the flask, and you want to make sure that it has 20% quality. I actually was not able to buy one with higher than 70% with also reduced charges per use. Maybe now there's gonna be more of them on the trade. I should actually probably check it, but it is actually not that super common to get combination of these two mods and also for them to be high tier. But yeah, this is also very important because whenever you're doing a single target, your rotation should be Frostwall, Frostbolt, Mana Flask. Frostwall, Frostbolt, Mana Flask. And you just keep doing that. Frostwall, Frostbolt, Mana Flask. You just want to almost like spam your Mana Flask because that's how much mana we are using on the build. Okay, so that was the Scepter and the Belt and the Flask. We don't really care about Life Flask, you can just remove it. For the second weapon, you just want as much crit chance as possible and +5 to cold spells. This is the two most important modifiers. After that, I would say the third most important is actually damage as extra lightning. Because if you have damage as extra lightning, you can remove the Shaper of Storms. And if you don't have damage as extra lightning, I probably would recommend just not using Refracted Infusion. I think Force of Will is a bit more important than that. But with this, we are not going to be shocking as much when it comes to mapping, but this lightning damage should be enough to shock whenever we are bossing. And of course, we are doing even more lightning damage with our lightning infused Frostwall, so that should be good enough for the shocks. And then after that, you just want cast speed, spell damage, cold damage, or any other as extra modifier. So that's the weapon. Then the boots. Just as much movement speed as possible. I went for the increased effect of socketed items with runes for 5% movement speed, so I'm getting in total 60% movement speed. I also get here 20% rarity and one of the resistances, and good amount of energy shield. Then helmet, it's very similar. You just go for as much energy shield, rarity, 1 resist, and I also went here for increased energy shield recharge rate. I didn't get that on the boots because I wanted the rarity and the resist. So that's what I have here. And then chest, just as much energy shield as possible. That's the highest priority on the prefixes. And suffix just resists and fastest start of energy shield recharge. This is actually my item that I still could upgrade because I have life regen. I did actually whittle chaos spammed it and I did hit life regen, which is kind of annoying, and now I actually cannot change it because it has the same tier as one of the other modifiers, I think Coldress, so I will have to break also Coldress to go for it, or I will have to risk it. So yeah, I just kept it. It is still fine, I don't really need additional resist. Then the ring, again, resist, the cast speed and rarity. For prefixes, percentage mana, and that flat fire should be flat mana, but I also didn't feel like I need it anymore and it would be kind of expensive to go for it, so I didn't change it. And I think these are all of the pieces of the gear. Amulet, you just want cast speed, as much energy shield as possible. You can get some mana regen, you can get crit chance. You don't need crit damage. Crit chance is good. Cast speed, of course, +2 level of skills, and spirit. So priority would be number 1, getting the spirit, because you're going to need it. Then +2 level skills. Then some energy shields. So I have global defenses. And after that, either cast speed, mana regen, or crit. All of these are good. And on prefixes, spell damage, you can also get rarity, you can get flat ES, you can get percentage ES. There is a lot of different modifiers. This amulet also I probably could upgrade. I could get percentage ES instead of global defenses. I could get flat ES instead of spell damage, or maybe rarity. I don't know, but yeah, that's basically the ring. And for talismans, freeze immunity, I'm using Rite of Passage, so it gives me even more rarity, and I'm possessed by the spirit of Owl. And Owl gives 60% ES, 80% damage, and 20% as extra cold. So it's pretty good charm for us. And it's not like super expensive. I think it goes right now for like 15 divine, so compared to some of the other ones, it is pretty good. And for the last one, I just went for a slow charm. You can also go for the unique one, which give onslaught, but I actually prefer magic one because it has increased duration and reduced charges per use. Because in maps, you very often get either chilled ground or temporal chains curse, which this actually works on. And with increased duration, it actually lasts almost the entire temp chain duration. I think temp chain lasts like 15 seconds or something, or 10 seconds, I don't remember. But temp chain almost runs out whenever this charm runs out for me. And now talking about the tree, I already talked about Ascendancy, so the highest priority is going for the shock magnitude, then go for Shaper of Storms if you don't have extra lightning damage on your ones. If you do, then go for the Arcane Surge, Force of Will, and then Refracted Infusions. If you are playing version without Snakepit, then Refracted Infusion has higher priority because you need the cold infusions for Frost Nova or Frost Darts. Then for the tree, I actually changed quite a lot. I went this way, not left side, because I want energy shield and I want some mana. Then of course here, yes, crit, mana efficiency. I also am getting a lot of questions, what are the green and red lines? These are the weapon sets. The red lines are the first weapon set, so what we are using whenever we are using these weapons, and second set is what we are using with these weapons. And when it comes to the skills, I'm using every skill in my first weapon set. I'm only using the Frost Bomb in the second one and the Curse in the second one. Because whenever you're going to use the Frost Bomb, it's gonna swap to these points. So just so you see here, it's changing to these ones. So the exposure is gonna, from the Frostbolt, is gonna be enhanced by these points and also these, and also Curse is gonna be enhanced by these ones. So that's why you want to use these green and red passive points. Then here we are going for shock effect. Some additional damage when we are shocking and chilling. You could go for ignite because you do still deal fire damage with the comet, but I'm actually not sure how consistent it is, how often we are igniting, so I didn't go for it, but you could go for it too. Then additional projectiles, we are also using a rune for even more chance for additional projectiles. You don't really have to use it, you can go for +1 if you want more damage, it's fine. And then here, crit chance, damage reduction doesn't affect us because of the Maligaro gloves. Crit chance here, cost efficiency. These are actually pretty good. This is especially good whenever you are in a map and enemies have additional resistances. This makes it so you don't necessarily have to use Curse or Bomb to reduce the resist. As soon as you freeze them, they are basically going to have 0 resistances. But it's still good to reduce it with Elo Weakness or the Frost Bomb. Of course, we go CI, so we have just energy shield, we don't care about life, and we don't care about chaos res. We do need some amount of stun threshold, so I went for these 3 points. I think these are the most efficient ones. Jewels. On jewels, you want as much crit chance. You want 1 jewel with mana on kill, which is what I have here, and then energy shield and any other useful modifier. Here I have faster start of energy shield recharge. Here I have double crit, ES, and magnitude of ailments, and here I have magnitude of ailments with crit, double crit chance, and ES. So these are basically jewels you want to go for. Oh, and here the last one, double crit chance, recharge, and ES. Then here, of course, we want as much ES as possible. I actually removed these because I needed more points, and I do prefer to have a little bit better, faster start than faster recovery. So I did remove these, and I went for some mana regen. Here we're still going for +1. I actually was thinking about removing this, but having additional freeze build up and +1 is pretty nice. Then here even more ES, and I already talked about Elemental Equilibrium. And here we go for even more crit chance. So this is how I was able to still have 100% crit chance without using a focus with crit chance, and also without having any additional crit chance on other pieces of gear like amulet and helmet. So go for crit chance here, go for crit chance here, here, and also use the jewels with even more crit chance. Previously I also was using crit chance here, so that's also something you can do if you don't have crit chance capped. Okay, so I think that was everything. Hopefully I did answer most of the commonly asked questions, and The reason why I am stopping to play this build now is because I want to make a Chronomancer version, because I also do get a lot of questions. What would I do on this build if I played Chronomancer? What would you do on a Blood Mage? So my next build is gonna be still this build, but Chronomancer version. And the next one is going to be Blood Mage version. So if you want to see how I'm gonna build this character, make sure to check it out either on YouTube when I'm gonna make a video or live on Twitch when I'm streaming on twitch.tv/zen_m. But that's gonna be it for this video. Thanks for watching and see you next time.